You guys have all been on the show before, so let's, and we'll just kind of go round table. This will be kind of organized chaos, but it'll be fun. So here we go. In 3, 2, 1. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the end of 2021. I know that many of us are going good riddance, but there were some good things that happened in 2021, and a lot of it was Bruce related. So I have gotten a esteemed all-star panel to join me, and we're going to do a quick year in reviews. This is Set Listing Bruce, not the Dick Clark extravaganza. Joining me from left to right on my screen, Jon. Say hi, Jon.
Hey, Jesse.
Tell us a little about yourself.
Yeah, hey, my name is Jon Munson, and I am 57 years old. I live in Phoenix, Arizona. I've been down here in the desert for about 35 years. I grew up in the Seattle, Washington area, and I have been an avid Bruce Springsteen fan since I was 16 years old. The moment that changed my life, October 1980. I saw the River Tour. I saw Bruce Springsteen and the E Street Band at the Seattle Center Coliseum. Wonderful show. So excited. And boy, since then, Bruce's music has been the soundtrack of my life. And I'm excited tonight to talk about 2021 year in review.
Very nice. And fresh graduate from college, here to represent the younger generation fandom, and also will give us a Neil's perspective. Rachel, welcome, and so glad you're here.
Thank you.
Tell us a little about yourself.
All right, so yeah, I'm Rachel, and like you mentioned, just graduated college. I'm 21, and I think, okay, so the way that I kind of came about becoming a Bruce fan was that both of my parents are huge fans. So I literally just grew up listening to it. And then I really got into his music when I first started college. I was having a really hard time adjusting to everything, dealing with a lot of depression and anxiety. And I just wanted to listen to something that was familiar. So I just started listening to Bruce, and then I was like, hey, wait a minute, actually, I love this. And then all just kind of started from there. And of course, like mentioned along the way, I also became a really big Nils fan. So there's that too, thrown into the mix.
Yes, we will probably end up talking about Amy and Niels loving you on Twitter.
Oh my God.
Which is nice.
I call them my Twitter parents. I love them.
Yes. And Betsy is joining us as well from the East Coast. Betsy, lovely to see you again. Tell us a little about yourself.
Hey, Jesse, it's so exciting to be here. I love talking about Bruce. I'm living in Washington, D.C. most of my life. I lived in Minnesota, Minneapolis in particular. I was the mayor there, which was exciting. And Bruce's music got me through the rough spots and the high spots. But as I was, sometimes say it's not exactly a qualification for being on here. What qualifies me to be on here is that I love his music and the music of the band, and consider it my touchstone for my life. And I'm not somebody who's been a fan since I was knee high to a grasshopper. About 20 years ago, I woke up one morning and decided I needed to start listening to Bruce Springsteen, and I have never stopped.
Wise move on your part. And last but not least, I guess I should say last but not least, no. Ken Rosen, frequent guest on the podcast, now almost hitting 1,500 days in a row of a consecutive blog, which is just crazy. Ken, welcome to the show. And for those of you who have not heard from you, tell us a little about yourself.
Thanks, Jesse, for having me. My head's kind of going like, I haven't checked the counter on my blog. Am I really close to 1,500 days? I have to go look at that. My name's Ken Rosen. I read a blog called eStreetShuffle.com that kind of chronicles this day in Springsteen history, and then does like some deep dives into Bruce's catalog, both published and unpublished. I am the other Seattle-based or Seattle roots guest on the show, John. There's not many of us.
No, I totally agree.
I'm from Philly originally, born and raised, but moved out to the Northwest in early 90s. Lived most of my life out here now. So yeah, I've been a Bruce fan, to some depth or degree all my life, because I'm from Philadelphia, so you kind of have to be. But really just kind of, I think, started diving deep in the post reunion era, when it just became really easy to start getting access to all the bootlegs and be able to see multiple shows, and just really started to gain an appreciation for the not just the depth of his catalog, but kind of the chronological aspect, where you could hear his voice, and his music develop over the years. Just got fascinated by that. So yeah, just glad to be here. Thanks for having me.
Well, I am so glad. This is such a great panel, and I appreciate it. So John did a lot of our heavy lifting for us. When I invited people, John immediately emailed back and said, yeah, here's what I've got so far for the year. And then a couple other people added stuff. So I think we'll kind of try to go chronological, but we'll also go around the board and kind of as we think of things. But I think the two things that struck me that made me very proud as a Bruce fan was his two national appearances. One, when they did the kind of mourning, the honoring of all the people we had lost with COVID, and him performing, and then him rocking the P jacket on inaugural, doing that, like I always thought I wish I could look as good as he did in a blue jean jacket. And then when he's rocking that, I'm like, I think whatever jacket he's wearing, he's good. So Betsy, I'm going to start with you. What were your thoughts about those two televised appearances?
Well, the inaugural was very exciting because I live here in DC, and I was like, oh my God, he's like, and I live downtown. I can run, I do frequently run to the Lincoln Memorial. So I was like, oh my God, I could just run. If I ran there right now, I could just like wave and say hi, which of course I did not do. But the next day I went for a run, and of course, watching it, I knew exactly where he was standing because I run to the Lincoln Memorial frequently. So I stood right there and I listened to the performance, standing where he had stood maybe 18 hours before. So that's how I feel about it. I thought
that brings me great joy.
Yeah. It's one of my highlights of the whole year, actually. Yeah. And I thought it was a great performance, a perfect song for the moment, and the perfect performer for that moment. A sea change and back to what we remember, Land of Hope and Dreams. I thought it was remarkable. And it really touched my heart that I got to witness it as an American.
Very nice. And so Ken, share me what you think of the inauguration. And Stephen, we will get with you in just a moment.
Oh, that was just a moment of intense joy and pride for so many reasons. Like Betsy said, just the song "Land of Hope and Dreams" has been my favorite Bruce song. Is "Vary by Day," but I think "Land of Hope and Dreams" has always been in the top 3, and probably usually the top number 1 on that. And so it's just when he finds the right moment for that means a lot. And just and also just the occasion itself. Joe Biden was not he was not a settle candidate for me. I have always been a big Biden fan, just being from Pennsylvania. He's just always been part of our politics and our scene, just growing up. I actually have a photo somewhere of like my mom and me with him.
Oh, how fun.
Well before he ran.
Yeah.
So that was just really cool to actually see Bruce throw his support behind him during the campaign, and then also for the inauguration.
Very nice. John, thoughts?
I probably can't add much more than what Betsy and Ken have already said, but I think it was just real emotional. I mean, I think from a political standpoint, I, you know, I was very happy with the results of the election, and it was very exciting to saying, hey, you know what, tomorrow's a new day, and the fact that they asked Bruce to lead the show off was very exciting.
Absolutely. Rachel?
Well, going after everybody else, it's like you guys pretty much covered it. But I mean, I will say for me, I mean, it was the first presidential election that I was able to vote in. So it was
Very cool.
already
Nice.
like a big
Yes.
moment for me. But yeah, I think, I mean, what everybody else said, it was kind of like a huge sense of relief. Because honestly, just thinking about like the political atmosphere, I'm always thinking about like, okay, well, what is my future going to be like? Like what are we doing essentially? So for me, that was super relieving. And then I think just like, kind of like what Betsy said, I mean, having Bruce kind of like, he's the perfect person. I mean, I know we're all going to say that, but I really do think that he was the perfect kind of representation of a lot of the things, honestly, that Biden stands for, but just kind of that, I mean, maybe this is my like daughter of a steel worker coming out, but like just that like working class kind of just representation, I think that a lot of people just wanted and needed to see. So yeah, I thought it was great. I thought it was perfectly timed, everything. So
Yeah. Well, and joining us, we jumped the gun a little bit. And so I'm so glad you joined us, Stephen. So I'm going to let you catch up, tell everyone a little bit about yourself, and then I want to hear what you thought about Bruce playing at the memorial for all the people at COVID and the inauguration.
Yeah, thanks. So I'm sorry I'm late.
No problem.
Anyway, I appreciate you you inviting me in. I don't know what there is to say about myself much. I teach Greek and Latin in Michigan, of all things, and I have a family, 3 of us. I don't know what you already said about those 2 things, but I'll just say something. I heard you all talking about Land of Hope and Dreams at the inauguration, and I think, Ken, it was you that said, or maybe someone else. I came in kind of late and said, that's one of your top Bruce songs. It's one of my top Bruce songs as well, especially at a time when things were feeling so dark at the end of 2020. Most of 2020 was so dark. I really thought hearing Bruce sing that song in particular, it's that kind of hopefulness that I needed to feel at the beginning of the year.
Yeah, well said. I used to say that if you couldn't get Ray Charles to sing America the Beautiful, you shouldn't perform it, right? Like I used to always go, if you can't get Daddy Ray, I don't care if it's Willie Nelson, whoever else, if Ray Charles is alive and you need America the Beautiful, then you should have Ray Charles do it. And there are some people that have covered Land and Hope and Dreams, but there is just, it feels right. And to me, it feels that iconic of Ray Charles doing America the Beautiful, Bruce Springsteen doing Land of Hope and Dreams. He played it at, the last Daily Show when Jon Stewart was retiring. He's done it every other places. And so having it do that when that cold weather and him in that pea coat and that beautiful memorial behind it, it was I agree with a lot what you guys said. It felt hopeful to me. I've said many times on the podcast that at the end of 2020, I said if we could get a new Springsteen album and a new president, maybe 2020 wasn't the worst year ever. And all apologies to people who supported the other candidate. That's your right and everything, but I felt like we needed someone that had a little more love and kindness in their heart. And so it made me very happy. So absolutely. And I am on the record, Land of Hope and Dream is always #1 on my list. But the other Better Days, and then 3 rotates all the time. So I'm going to start with you, Rachel. That way it flowed. Everyone else gets stuck. No one else has to get stuck being the same person being last. When Bruce talked about having a lot of new things, I don't think anyone had Super Bowl ad on their bingo card. So
No.
I'll start with you. What did you think about that?
Okay, so personally, I really enjoyed it. I thought that kind of similar to the inaugural performance, I thought that it was very well timed in terms of the message. I know a lot of people were pretty upset, just not really feeling it, thought he had, was selling out and was just, whatever. But I don't know. I mean, I took more to heart the message of it all as opposed to the platform. I think that, it was something that I don't think that you could build your career off of this kind of, like I mentioned earlier, kind of working class, just like everyday people kind of theme, and then not be sincere in that through an ad. I mean, personally, like, I don't care how much, if he made, I don't care how much he made off of anything, to be quite honest. Like, at the end of the day, the message was what it was, and I think that it was very needed, still needed. So if it were, I mean, I know it's December, but if there were another Super Bowl ad to come out tomorrow, it wouldn't make a difference to me either. I think that it was just something that he saw the purpose of. And I think, most people were probably pretty receptive to it, and other people maybe not as much, but either way, I took away the message. And I think that was, I would imagine that would be his intention. So I was a fan.
Perfect, Rachel. Hey, John, how about you?
Yeah. Hey, Jesse, if I recall, you did a podcast on the Super Bowl ad to get some feedback. Yeah. And I really enjoyed listening to that, because that gave me some different perspective. I mean, I think the things that stand out to me on that Super Bowl ad was, number one, that it was basically just shown that one time. I mean, we could find it online, but it was just going to be broadcast once, as opposed to a lot of these Super Bowl ads, you see them, weeks and weeks afterwards. The other thing that stood out was, kind of reading the backstory about, them going to, and forgive me, I forget the specific town, but you're literally going to the middle of America to film that, and kind of the painstaking effort that went into building that. I mean, it was very well produced. It's almost like, the Bruce Springsteen camp. They don't do anything second rate. If they're going to do something like that, they're going to go all out. And speaking of the message, and what was interesting, Jesse, and it was your podcast that made me think about it, was I can't remember. I can't remember if it was Bella or if it was someone else, but they're basically saying, as far as the message, I don't know if I'm ready to meet everyone in the middle. After what we've seen with January 6th and what we're seeing right now, I don't know if I'm ready. And I don't know what the answer to that is, but it was real interesting where you had some people say, you know what, this is the message resonates with me. And then there were a few on the fringe that said, boy, this is we need to get, we need both sides to really, be accountable for their actions before we really say, hey, we can meet and move on. So those are my general thoughts, Jesse.
Yeah, I'm going to get to my other guests too, but to which I can't remember who said it, but some columnist said watching the extreme right and the extreme left argue about the Super Bowl commercial tells you how far away we are as a country, because both sides were mad at him about that. Stephen, I'll go to you next. Any thoughts about the ad?
Yeah, I think that you're right. I think because the message was that we have to meet in the middle, it meant that nobody was happy with what Bruce did. If you were on the right, you thought that probably listen to this guy who did a podcast with the president, or maybe that was before that, but he's stumped for Democratic candidates, and now he wants to meet in the middle. And then, liberals say, well, what the heck is he talking about? January 6th, there is no meeting in the middle with these people. But the fact of the matter is, we do live in a big, complex country. And we have to figure out how to live with people with whom we disagree, and disagree strongly. And I say that because I live in a very red place in Michigan. I'm not a Republican voter, but these are my neighbors, and we don't always agree. In fact, sometimes we don't agree, but we have to learn how to live with one another. That's getting harder to do in 2020 and 2021. And there are all sorts of complicated reasons for that. I think in part, it's because we don't really have a common language that we all speak. When Abraham Lincoln delivered the Gettysburg Address, there were lots of biblical references in it because that was a common language that all Americans shared. What is that common language that we all share now? I ask that seriously. We're all have different media that we consume, different news, different TV shows that we're watching. So really, the one thing I think that everyone is watching is probably the Super Bowl. Yeah. And so it might even be football. So I'm thinking that the message there is something that's coming from a real concern that Bruce probably has about the fabric of this country. At least it's something that I share. So I appreciated his message and what he was trying to say, even though I understand that there's plenty of room to critique and disagree. But bottom line, if we're going to stay the United States of America, we have to figure out how to live with one another in our disagreements, not despite them, but in them, and to appreciate one another in them.
Well said. Ken, you, and then I'm going to go to Betsy, because Betsy and I've talked about this already.
I don't know that I can top what Stephen said. That was very well said, Stephen. Yeah, I guess the only thing I would add is that I felt like Bruce's message was wholly consistent with everything that he has talked about and how he has conducted himself over the years, right? And to me, it was not cognitive dissonance at all for him to have very, liberal political beliefs, and also to say, you can choose to fight wholly for your beliefs and win. But when you do that, and you may win one cycle, one election, what that really does is it causes the other side to dig in their heels, right, and regroup, and then the pendulum swings back. And if you actually want to move forward as a country, as a society, like Stephen said, you got to find a way to converse. You got to find a way to have a conversation. And it may not make people on either side happy about that, but it is the only way to otherwise you're just going round for round. That's all, right? You don't actually get to move forward. I actually inspired by that notion, that commercial. I actually just joined an organization recently called Braver Angels. I don't know if any of you've heard of that, but Betsy's nodding her head. And so they're actually a group that actually brings people together. They do workshops to get people on both sides to come together and just talk and to seek to understand and listen. And they actually train people to go and facilitate those workshops. And
Ooh,
I was like, I think
that sounds very interesting.
Yeah, I was like, I think I want to do that. I really like that message that that Bruce was sending, I'm like, that really resonated with me. Like, I want to, I don't want to win.
Yeah.
I want to move forward together, right? I'm really tired of the polarization of it. So I know that it it garnered a lot of flack and a lot of controversy, but I thought it was a really important message that unfortunately got overshadowed by other events very quickly right afterwards.
Yeah, it did. Betsy, I think we and I had either did your songs of your life, or one of your episodes was when this had already happened and you talked about it. So I specifically had you last because I remember you had, now putting you under the pressure, some really good things to say about this.
Oh, I could actually talk about it all day.
Yeah.
I agree with Ken, and this is the guy who wrote the album Nebraska.
Yeah.
Right? He wrote songs humanizing murderers and serial killers and telling their stories in a way where you don't condone what they did, those characters, but you understand them and you can see their humanity. And that is the thing that draws me to Bruce's music the most, is that he's not naive about who we are as a people, but he is always believing that the best of us is possible to rise. It's possible for the best of us to rise to any occasion. He really believes in us and our humanity, whether he agrees with us or not, whether he condones what we're doing or not. And that is why I listen to him all day, every day for years on end. That itself. And so I agree with Ken, that message at that Super Bowl ad was very much in line with everything he's been saying in conversation with us through his music, through his From His Home to Ours radio show that he's been doing for the last couple years, through his autobiography, his show on Broadway, eventually his podcast with President Obama. I mean, he is consistent. And what he consistently does is invite us to rise to the occasion with our best selves and not our worst selves, which is what that ad was doing. And it took a lot, I won't say it took a lot of courage, because that implies that he cared that he was going to get a lot of flack. But I just tried to put myself in his shoes, and I thought to myself, you know what? It's the biggest platform this country has to offer. For him to offer us the biggest message and the message he cares about the most at the moment when we needed it the most. I would just thought to myself, of course he took that opportunity. Of course he did. And the price he paid was to be accused of selling out, to be accused of this and accused of that, which I'm sure he saw ahead of time. He is a very perspicacious person, as far as I can tell. He knew the flack that would come his way. He didn't choose just any random product to tie his name to. It's an American-made vehicle that he actually uses himself. It's a product he believes in and he uses and has used for many years. But that was the price he paid to get access to the biggest platform he had, with the message that was most important to him, to reach the maximum number of people he could at a time when we need that message the most. So yeah, I thought it was a remarkable move on his part. I think it was a remarkable sacrifice on his part on behalf of that message. And I know that people, well, it wasn't a sacrifice, he got paid, yada, yada. I mean, I'm not sure he's hurting for cash at the moment. I really don't think that was the motivation.
Even before this last thing we will talk about on our year in review, he was doing okay even before. So yeah, I don't think he was needing. Yeah.
Yeah, he was doing just fine. So I appreciated it and I was moved by it.
We'll move on in a minute, but and please feel free to, after I share this, it made me think about, because I can be that person who is very angry at the other side. I'm angry at some of the decisions that the other side has done. I am in a red state, similar to you, Stephen, and I feel like my congressman and my two senators, anytime I reach out to them, they don't respond to my concerns. They just tell me why I'm wrong in what I'm wanting them to do, you know, and you know, you just get upset about, you know, whether it's woman, you know, reproduction choices in Texas, or changing how you vote and what you do and all these things. And it's easy to get angry versus trying to find the humanity on the other side. And so to me, that spoke to me that, hey, let's look for the good in someone else, and let's find our common ground and kind of work together. And true, I think there will be extremes on both sides, that there is no common ground, but you know, there's got to be 60% of the country that are only this little bit away from each other, as I do a physical thing that my audience can't see. So any other thoughts before we move to, speaking of polarizing, the podcast I recommend very strongly, even before Set Listing Bruce, I recommend to everyone, Renegades. So any other thoughts about the Super Bowl, or can we move on to the podcast? All right, let's start with you, John. Did you get to listen to all of them? And if so, what did you think of them?
Yeah, I did, Jesse. I listened to all of them. Hey, one of the most memorable things, I don't know how everyone was set up in different parts of the country, but you know, the podcast, I was listening to one the first week in March, and that's when I first became eligible to get the vaccination here in Arizona. And it was at the big State Farm Stadium where the Cardinals play football here. And you had to wait like 2 hours in line, and it was well worth it.
Yeah.
But anyway, I listened to a complete podcast episode while I was waiting for my vaccination. That'll always be memorable.
That's a nice synergy.
Yeah. I'll just make one comment. The most memorable thing in all of those episodes was the story when he was talking about his kids, and when his kids were young, and he was talking a lot about Patty, and he was talking about how Patty had shaped his life from the standpoint of he was, you know, in a rock and roll band, stay out all night, and you know, it's all about the music, and then sleep in all day. And you know, Patty said, you know, Bruce, you should think about getting up earlier in the morning to see the kids. She's like, well, you know, I see the kids in the afternoon. She goes, no, they're at their best in the morning.
You're missing it. Isn't that how she put it? You're
yes,
missing
exactly.
It.
And I think that was the most memorable thing I thought about, was because you know, when you're the greatest rock star in the world, you're probably, to a certain degree, it's easy to be set in your ways. But then to basically listen to someone that was close to you that says, look, you know, I'm not telling you to this, but I think you should think about this. And he said that was one of the best things that happened. So I'd love to hear what other people got out of the podcast.
Ken?
You know, there were two things that stood out to me in that podcast. One was just they have such a unique perspective on life and society in general, and each other, that they asked each other questions that no other interviewer would ask. And they were able to elicit stories and details, intimate details, that no one else who has had that opportunity has been able to do. So it was just fascinating to hear those kinds of things come out. The other thing that was really, really interesting and endearing to me was how kind of in awe of each other they both were. Like, you know, for two people who are supposed to be pretty good friends and are portrayed that way, they clearly were still just kind of like, you know, you could hear, Obama was a little cooler, but you could still hear, like, I'm talking to Bruce Springsteen, but you could totally hear in Bruce's voice a shyness. And like, I cannot believe that I am having this conversation with the president, the former president of the United States. And I just thought that was so, it was such a different side of their personalities, of their public personalities, right? That you never get to witness to, that I thought was just completely fascinating and endearing.
Well, and I love that. What do I call you? Like, let's get that out of the way, right? Like, what am I going to call you? Yeah, I agree. Betsy?
When it first came through my feed, I thought it was a joke. I thought it was a meme, because it was like so perfectly curated to my interests and fandoms that I was like, this can't possibly be true. That's beyond the pale. I am a big fan of President Obama. People around me know that. You know, I have pictures of him at various places around here. And God knows, everybody knows I'm a huge Springsteen fan. And so it was extraordinary to me to hear them talk. And that I really love hearing Bruce talk with his friends, because he is relaxed in a way that he's not with an interviewer. You know, From My Home to Yours, where he's with Stevie and Southside Johnny, or the episode with Patty, and like this, they're clearly actually friends. While yes, they're also, you know, oh hey, you're the former president. Oh hey, you're the biggest rock and roll star in the world. Okay, now that we have that out of the way, we have a lot in common. And I loved hearing them talk about fatherhood and masculinity and what it meant to them, and where they had been versus where they had to grow to, what it meant for them to be married to the women that they're married to in that, you know, on that road. It was illuminating, and not just because, oh, I'm a fan of both of them, so now I know more things, but illuminating because it reflected back to me things about the world in a way I hadn't really thought about them before. There was just new insights there about how the world is, which is something I value from both of them in their own ways, and to hear them riffing off each other from their own perspectives was remarkable.
Yeah, someone said that they didn't think they learned anything new about either one of them, and I found that hard to believe, because, you know, I've read Bruce's autobiography, I've read the other biographies, and I felt like I was lucky enough to go to Broadway, and I still felt like I learned more things about both of them and their interactions together. It was really, really interesting. Stephen, how about you?
Yeah, I agree with what others have been saying. I'll point to a moment that stuck out to me, because it's something that I actually think about when I think about Bruce, and that is, I think President Obama was talking, and he tells a story about Michelle saying something like, "Now, do you see how Bruce is a man who has come to terms with his own failings?" And that's something that I really admire about Bruce myself. Is I know he isn't perfect, and he has talked about that, especially as he's gotten older. You know, one of the things he said is, you know, if I really loved you, I hurt you. That was what the price of being you know, loved by me. And so what's implied, but he doesn't talk about much, first is his first wife, you know, what that may have looked like, but even how he may have hurt Patty, right? Because it was Patty that has helped him come to terms with this. Now, of course, he's not telling us any of those details, but you know that it's there just by him saying those sorts of things. But they're still married despite those hurts. And so I think it's incredible that they've been married for 30 years, and he's a big rock star, and I don't know how many rock stars there are that stay married that long, but it's
Yeah. I remember an article once that compared Bruce Springsteen to Ronald Reagan. It was kind of tongue in cheek about how conservatives should embrace him. And one of the things is Ronald had a second marriage that was incredibly successful after a first marriage that failed. And I do think that it was fascinating in the autobiography of Bruce raising the hand and saying, "This was all my fault." And I'm sure that any marriage that doesn't work, they're equal for both sides, but he took a lot of it. I agree, that was really wonderful. The other thing I really thought of is when he does My Hometown, and he goes, "Pretty good song." And President Obama goes, no, great song. Like, kind of correct him. Like, no, it's a great song. So Rachel, in between studying and trying to get everything, were you able to hear the podcasts?
Okay, so not really. Completely full transparency.
I understand totally.
Yeah. So, I mean, I was obviously, obviously I knew about it.
Yes.
So there was that, but I mean, of course, I'm super excited too, because it's like, oh my God, two people. Well, like two people that I love, but at the same time, like, okay, yes, like like Bruce was more, I'm not like at Betsy's level where they're both like hero status. Like,
Yeah.
I love President Obama, but it wasn't necessarily the same experience. But I will say also it was special in the sense that both of them are people that I kind of had like this like growing up kind of weird situation with, because President Obama was the first president that I genuinely remember. So I was 8 when he was elected. So that kind of just brought about that same sense that I have with Bruce of like comfort and kind of familiarity of like growing up. And so I think that through the podcast, like now I'm excited to like, now that I'm graduated and I like actually have time,
Yes.
now I'm even more excited to listen to it, because I think that it's like I'm at a very like transformative kind of period in my life. So
Yeah.
not that there would be a bad time to listen to this podcast, but I'm just super excited for that personally. But yeah, I mean, I think that it was exactly what we needed this year, to kind of in my opinion, they're both, for me, two voices that have always kind of provided a sense of comfort. So I think that, you really can't go wrong anytime, but especially, oh yeah, and it's a global pandemic, and whatever you might be going through personally. I think that it was just, I know I've said this probably about every topic that we've rolled through, but once again, perfectly timed.
Yes.
So yeah.
I really do. And I got the book, for Christmas. And so I was really excited to have it, because there's some more behind the scenes and some great photos, and just, it really was kind of neat. The other thing I thought of as I was listening to this is President Obama directly influenced Springsteen on Broadway and Hamilton, and so you're like, maybe you should get into the production end. Maybe you should be, maybe you want to get into show business, like, because that's a pretty good track record. If you can have Hamilton and Springsteen on Broadway as part of your creative process, is good. I did want to just go really around. I was able to hear most of the From My Home to You. I was really surprised he kept doing this. And I do think he really likes doing this. I think this is something that, as him not being able to perform live, is a way for him to connect with his audience and also to share music he likes. One of my best friends says that he doesn't really think Bruce likes a lot of new music. He just finds a band and says it to be cool. And I think that based on the songs he picked From My Home to Yours, that's BS, right? So Stephen, I'll talk to you. Have you gotten to hear some of these, and any thoughts?
I've listened to some of them, but I haven't listened to a lot of them. Just to be honest, I'm not the best person to start with on this.
No, I understand, and that's why not everyone has the Sirius XM, and not everyone has the time to do that. So yeah, anyone? I'll throw it open. Anyone want to add a comment before we go on to our next topic about the From My Home to You? Go ahead, Betsy.
I have listened to all of them, and I love them. they've been an extension of his conversation with us.
Yeah.
They've introduced me to some really great new music that I wasn't familiar with. Sometimes it's like taking a music history course, but sometimes it's just fun. And I put it on my calendar every time I heard there was a new one. I usually listened to them, the first time they were airing, in part because I just wanted to hear what he'd say.
Yeah.
And I wanted to hear the music. I wanted to hear the music he wanted me to hear, and I wanted to hear what he had to say. And again, he started this during the pandemic, in the first couple months of the pandemic, and he's been doing it ever since. And it has been one of the lifelines I've had during this pandemic.
Yeah, it was funny. One of the first times we heard it, we were in the car, and my wife is a casual Springsteen fan at best, and she was, I just wish he'd keep talking. I don't think we need the songs interrupting it. And then later she was like, oh, that's pretty interesting song. So anyone else want to add anything?
Just
Or-
that.
Yeah,
I'm not sure he's still doing them. It's been a while.
it has been a while.
Yeah, I
Yes.
think he might be done.
Yeah.
It's not like, it would be unlike him to say he was done. So
Yeah,
I
that's
think
true.
he would just sort of stop and move on.
Well, I still
but-
get the notification from the Sirius on my phone that there's From My Home to You, and I'll turn it on and I'm like, okay, I've heard that one.
Yeah.
So yeah, maybe
I
he's
hope there's
reached
more.
enough to be syndication, right? Like, like they said, you had to get 100 episodes on a sitcom. Maybe they've got enough that they can just rotate as, in syndication.
Or maybe he's working on new music and playing some,
Absolutely.
in the city and stuff. So
I'm not convinced that he's done. He may be.
Yeah.
The last one he did was October, but then subsequent to that, there was the holidays and then
Yep.
the release of
Yeah.
No Nukes. So he's been doing all that with the No
Yeah.
Nukes and some other music, like the music with Mellencamp has been coming out, and I think he hasn't want to overshadow those. So you may be right, he's done, but I wouldn't be shocked if he did another one or two after things slow down from these holidays.
Well, I know none of us had, once again, as I go back to the bingo card, no one expected Springsteen on Broadway to come back and come back the way it is. Ken, we got to start with you because you wrote a whole column and a Backstreets review because you were there opening night. So
yeah.
let's talk a little bit about, were you a little surprised and what about it?
I was fortunate enough to be there opening and closing night of this run. And so I had a chance to kind of see it. Well, I didn't see it develop over the course of the run, but I got to see what it became. I wasn't surprised that he did it. I don't know that I would have predicted it, but it seemed like, again, in keeping for him to do, right? So we were coming out, we thought of the pandemic. Broadway, had to come back. That was very symbolic because it was one of the first things to shut down. And it is very much like Bruce to say, I'm going to be a part of that. And of course, I think he wanted to perform. I didn't necessarily expect him to update the show, especially because he sort of telegraphed that he wasn't going to, I think, leading up to it. And I think he kind of just sort of started working on it and got into it and kind of felt like enough had changed that that he needed to. But I remember the first night that I was there, first of all, it was incredibly emotional in so many ways. There were protesters outside the entire time, and you could hear them in parts of the show, and Bruce even acknowledged them. It was just incredibly emotional when he came out onto the stage. Nobody was wearing masks that first night. Everybody was wearing masks at the end. But that first show, it was really kind of disjointed in that it felt like it was very conversational with the audience. And I think I wrote in my column that it felt less like Springsteen on Broadway and more like Bruce Springsteen reads selections from Springsteen on Broadway, where he would talk to the audience. It was very fresh and conversational, and then he would lapse into the show, and it would feel like he had two voices. Like he had his theater voice from the original run, and then he had his more conversational voice that was modern. And by the end of the run, they had merged. Like it was much, much, much more of a cohesive piece. And I really felt that by the end of it, especially at the conclusion when he would do I'll See You in My Dreams and talk about his visitation with his ghosts, the power of that piece, and literally his tears, that I don't know if he did it every night, but the night that I was there, it was one of the bravest, rawest performances I have seen on a stage. It was incredibly moving on that.
So Rachel, this was your first chance to see Bruce live. And for those of you who've not listened, Rachel joined me and we did a full episode about her adventures. Rachel Goes to New York. But talk about it a little bit, what it meant to you and how powerful that was for you.
Oh my God. Well, yeah, it was crazy. Good. But it was, yeah, like you said, it was my first Bruce experience. So obviously that was gonna be a lot. First time going to New York, so that was also big. But I was personally a little shocked that he revived it. Because the first run was right around when I started really doing that deep dive into his music. So, obviously I watched the Netflix and everything and, and that's all like in my mind. And I just remember like just gushing over that with my mom, like, oh my God, isn't he so great? Like blah, blah, blah. And then it's like, fast forward a few years and I just was like, I remember telling myself like, okay, like, I woke up that morning and I was like anxious and I was like, okay, I was like, just be open to everything. Like, yes, try to get your tickets. And if you get a ticket, you'll find a way to get yourself there. But right now, you just need to like relax. And if it doesn't happen, it was just not meant to be your first Bruce experience. Well, thankfully, it worked out for me. Which I'm super, super grateful for. It was such a great experience. Like, honestly, probably the greatest experience of my life. And of course, that was also in part because of just all of the love and support that I had been receiving pretty much my whole trip. I tweet a lot, so it was kind of fun for me to share. Like, I was going to do that anyway, but it was really nice to have that kind of interaction along the way too. In a way, it was kind of like, all right, get in everybody, like we're going to Springsteen on Broadway. So it was really great. And I mean, like, super, super emotional. Obviously, I was pretty much crying the whole time, like to the point where I was like, oh my God, like, I hope that this is not obnoxious, like to the people around me. I'm just like, yeah. But I mean, I think that just kind of goes to show, the rawness of this revival. And just, I mean, I personally also liked that he did update it, because I mean, naturally, I think that was just fitting. But of course, he does it in his way, which is just gonna be, not gonna be the same every night. And whatever, kind of emotions are coming up, just kind of rolling with that and allowing the audience to kind of direct that, in a way.
Yeah.
And I don't know, I just think that was super powerful. I know for me personally, the whole kind of depression, mental health aspect was really, really prominent. So yeah, my first episode on this podcast, I talk about that a lot.
Yeah.
But that really was like my main inspiration for really connecting with him as an artist. So I, to see it in person, and I mean, in that theater, there really was not a bad seat in the theater. So to get to have that intimate kind of personalized almost experience was just, I mean, I can't even really put it into words months later now, and I still don't have the words. But yeah, it was truly just a perfect experience, and I'm so, so grateful that I got to go.
Yeah, and I loved it. Like I said, if you're interested, please go and listen to that episode. Betsy, you shared one of the best and most touching stories of how you got to go to the original run. I will not spoil that, but and I do not mean to make this whole podcast ads for my previous episodes, but Betsy told a story that had me tearing up about how she got to see Bruce on Broadway the first time. Did you make it a second? Did you get to see this latest one?
Oh, Jesse. Yes, I did.
Yay!
And there is it may take too long to tell the magical story, but it's the only time I've ever heard anyone break into a concert on E Street Radio was Jim Rotolo breaking in to tell us that Springsteen was coming back to Broadway and tickets were going on sale on Thursday. I was like, okay. And I put it in my calendar. I said, I'm going to figure this out because I'm going. And then I called two different friends of mine who I knew would need a push to go, that they might or might not be able to figure out how to go on their own. And I basically bullied them into also, trying for tickets. And that day I went in, I got, I had a whole squad. We were all going for it. And somebody, said, just go on the app anyway. They say you can't use the app, but go on the app anyway, which is how I got 2 tickets for August 31st. And then I'm going to tell on myself here, but it turns out okay. I went back later that afternoon and because you can only get 2 tickets, but I thought, well, if I go in with a different email and then a different credit card, I could probably get they probably still have single tickets. And indeed, I got a single ticket for August 24th. And then I started losing sleep because that wasn't in the spirit of my fandom to go in and do that way. But one of the friends that I had called to bully about it, I don't think he'd mind me telling you, he was my chief of staff. He's still one of my best friends. And he hadn't been able to get a ticket. And I said, oh, that's not my single ticket. That's John's ticket. So I called him up and I said, guess what you're doing on August 24th? Is you're going to Springsteen on Broadway, my friend. And I just gave him the ticket, just gave it to him. Like that seemed like, that's why I had the ticket, was to give it to him. And he didn't quite, he's a huge fan, but he didn't quite understand. And so fine, my husband and I, he wanted to go, which is he's not a huge Bruce fan, but he really wanted to see this show. So he and I were going on the 31st. That was great. Both of the people that I had called ended up having tickets for August 24th. By chance, one friend was just going on the 24th and the other, because I made him go, he didn't have a choice. I gave him the ticket and told him he was going to get his butt on an airplane and get to New York. Well, that other friend, all her plans fell through and she called me up and said, do you want to come with me on the 24th? And I said, do I?
Yes.
So I ended up going on the 24th with both of the people that I had made go to the show, and then going back a week later and seeing it with my husband. It was again magical. It was just pure magic. And I'll never forget, because John seats, the single ticket I got was in the orchestra. He was in like the 8th row, right? And we were in the mezzanine, and we come down from the mezzanine. John walks out, and I will never forget the look on his face with the experience he just had. I knew the experience he just had because I had it. And he didn't know going in. He didn't know anything about the show. He hadn't watched Netflix or anything. And so he didn't know if there would be a band or what. And I refused to tell him. And he just walked, the look on his face. You know what the look was. He was just gobsmacked. And it was priceless. It was priceless because I paid it forward. And for anybody who knows the story of how I went the first time, I then got in touch with the people who made it possible for me to go the first time. And I told them that I had paid it forward. And I told them the whole story. I was like, what you did for me, I got to do for somebody else. you made that magic happen for me. So I made that magic happen for someone else. I paid it forward. And then the circle is complete.
That is a very Bruce story. That is exactly, I think, what Bruce would want to do. Steve and John, did either one of you get to go this second round?
I did.
You did?
So I didn't go to the first round.
Okay.
And so I turned 40 this year, and my wife said to me, "What do you want for your 40th birthday?" This was in April. I turned 40, and I said, "I don't want anything this year. I know Springsteen is going on tour, maybe next year, maybe the year after that. We're going. At least one show, and I want to travel to an East Coast city where the shows are great." Because I'm not, I mean, it's, I just wanted to do that before I die, or before he dies. That's probably more likely. He's not getting any younger, and I think, how many more shows am I going to get to see?
Right.
And I haven't seen a whole lot anyway. Well, this announcement came, and I just said to my wife, I said, "So we're going to New York, and we're going to Broadway, and I don't care what it costs." And she said, "Okay, we're going." and so I got the tickets. She went to go to New York.
Right.
She is not a big Bruce Springsteen fan at all. She sort of looks at me puzzled, actually, sometimes. I mean, she's into it because I'm into it, and she'll go because I want to go. But beyond that, no. But we went to the show, and right during 10th Avenue Freezed Out, she tapped me on the shoulder and she said, "This is amazing. I completely understand why you love him." And then afterwards we were talking about it, and she said, "Oh, you have to see him live. That's just the way that it is. There's just a different life to it." And so I don't know that she's a Springsteen fan, but she certainly appreciates why I appreciate him now.
That's a big gift. I know Ken has to go shortly, so we're going to jump ahead, and we're going to talk about the Steve Earle benefit. And as an introduction, I just had my friend on the phone on the episode talking about it, and he and I want to hear your thought, but he was telling his wife, like, we'll get a normal acoustic, because that's what he always plays at a benefit. And he said that when the Dukes came out, he went, "What?" And when Bruce came out with the electric guitar, he went, "What?" And you know how, and for the background, my son's dog, I'm dog sitting tonight, the way a puppy puts his head up, he said that's what he felt like. So Ken, you were there. Share.
I was, and I knew what was coming.
Oh, okay.
And I'll tell you how. So when I heard about the show and the lineup, I knew I had to be there on that because, of course, I love Bruce, but I'm also a huge Roseanne Cash fan. Willie Nile was fantastic. And so I knew I wanted to be there. I knew it was a cause I wanted to support. And they had all these interesting VIP packages for sale, these crazy combinations of stuff. Like you could have like a private dinner with Steve Earle, and I can't remember all the different parts, but there was one where you get to go to the rehearsals and sound check. And so I got that one. One of, I think, only 3 that they sold.
Wow.
On that. Or it was 6 people because he allowed 2 in. So I went with my friend Robin, and we went for the sound check, and they weren't really sure how it was going to go. Like it started at 3 in the afternoon. They said Bruce was supposed to show up at 5, and I was totally expecting, like you said, the acoustic mini set. So we get there, and we're sitting up in the front of the loge, just kind of overlooking the stage, and it's just the Dukes, it's just the band, and they're just kind of like working on stuff and just playing little riffs and stuff. And then the keyboard player, Eleanor Whitmore, I think her name is, she starts like playing the keyboard riff for Darkness. And I'm like, why is she playing Darkness on the Edge of Town? That's odd. maybe they're just, like, hey, they're waiting for Bruce. They think it would be cool to play some music. So they're doing that. And then the guitarist comes out and they start like doing like Glory Days. I'm like, oh my God. Like suddenly dawned on us what was going to happen. I'm like, I turned around and I'm like, I think we're getting Electric Bruce. Like, I think we're actually going to get a full band show. And sure enough, Bruce comes in around 5 o'clock and he's just like chatting with the band, and they're kind of like working up how to do the arrangement. And they went through the whole set for us at sound check. He was totally oblivious to us sitting up there. We were all like going like, oh my God, we're getting a private Bruce Springsteen concert. This is amazing. He's picked up an electric guitar. He's fronting the band. It was just so cool. I tweeted out, I think, I'm like, y'all, like, if you're going to the show, this is going to be amazing. It's going to be epic. And I was like trying so hard, like not to like, I didn't spill anything. But it was very cool. And then, he came out, and when he performed the sound check for us, I would say like the energy, it felt like a 10, right? In retrospect, it was probably an 8 compared to what it was in that room at the time, because the place went nuts. It felt, the energy level felt beyond what I have felt in an arena at a regular Springsteen show in the US. It was like all the pent up like anticipation and what everybody had been missing, and people like rushed the stage. And I actually think Bruce was quite surprised by the reception and overwhelmed by it. And when he did Glory Days, if you actually watch like the videos on it, you'll see everybody sing the song, the first verse to him. He did not expect that. That was not how they had worked it up. He just worked it up where like the band was going to come in and they were going to do a break, right? Get quiet for a minute, and then he was going to sing. And he was like, okay, this is happening, and kind of roll with it.
Yeah, I heard
and so it had that spontaneity.
Yeah, I heard like, okay, we didn't get Hungry Hearts, so we're going to make our own first verse.
Yeah.
For those of you, and then, like I said, I know you need to go, Ken, and I want to get everyone's thoughts, but Dale said that, all this talk about at his age, will we get long shows? Are we going to get a 90-minute gig? And I've had a lot of people in the show that said, look, live Bruce doesn't matter the time period, it's the experience. And Dale said those 4 songs, he left just as happy as a 3-hour show that he had gone. He said, I got full-fledged Bruce playing the songs. Trust me, this guy is not ready to retire. He is ready to tour. So any final thoughts you want to share, Ken? And then I'll throw around the room, and if you need to go, I understand.
No, just exactly what you said. I had a chance to see him at a few different benefits over the autumn, leading up to this one. And with each time, it was just clear that he was just like more and more in his arena rock mode. And I just hope that we get a chance to see him in that mode for real sometime real soon.
Very nice. Very good. Any other thoughts, anyone? I'm sure you guys have seen the video, or any thoughts about not just the Steve Earle, but any of the other benefits he did or performances he made this year. I was especially touched by the 9/11 memorial. I thought that, it was so satisfying to hear him perform live. He does seem like almost an elder statesman who can still rock and roll. I mean, like this voice of compassion in America. And we start with you, Stephen.
Yeah, I mean, I've only seen the videos, and I agree with Ken. Even when he did Hungry Heart by himself, that was like, this is arena rock, Bruce. I mean, he's ready. He's ready to get out and go. That's just how I felt. And I'm looking forward to, hopefully, soon that might happen. Yeah.
Please get vaccinated, people. Let's get out of this. Rachel, have you got to see anything or any thoughts about some of the other videos that have been floating around about his performances?
Yeah, so I don't have as much to add maybe about the specific benefits.
That's okay.
I mean, listen, any live Bruce performance is going to be amazing.
Right.
But yes, see, me and Betsy are in total agreement.
Yes.
But in terms of the, oh, well, are these shows going to be the same length and the same energy level? And do you think that he actually will still tour, like blah, 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 whatever? Well, first of all, obviously, like everybody else, of course, I am hopeful that there will be another tour. Even if just for my own selfish interest in not having yet seen Bruce and the E Street Band live. But also, I think, I completely agree with kind of what's already been said of, it doesn't necessarily matter as much, how long or anything like that. If it's a live Bruce performance, everybody, and I think that, as we've kind of all shared our own individual stories, it's one of those things where even if you walk in not necessarily being a fan, everybody walks out with something. I won't say everybody will walk out a fan, because that's not necessarily true, but everybody will walk out having taken something away from it. And I mean,
think so.
honestly, I mean, like, what more? How much more of an impact can you really make besides that? Like,
Yeah.
I mean, for me especially, it's like, I was literally a baby when I first heard his music, and so from then to now, it's like my love for him and my appreciation and admiration and everything has only gone up. So I mean, I think that just kind of goes to show the kind of artist he is, but also, I mean, the kind of person he is. So
Sure. Absolutely. Well said. John, any thoughts?
Jesse, I did not get to see Electric Bruce like Dale or Ken, though I did see the videos. But my impression, I did go to Broadway the last show. I went on Thursday. I went on Thursday, September 2nd. So that was 2 nights after Betsy. And it was the night before Ken went. Ken went Friday the 3rd and Saturday the 4th. But anyway, I knew the show. I knew Broadway was going to be good. But I was kind of expecting that, between Ken's original review of opening night, which he said it was good, but a little off kilter, but it was still good and emotional. But between Ken's review and then Bruce making a comment that, well, I really don't rehearse this stuff, I just kind of let it go.
Yeah.
I was just expecting, a pretty good show. And you know what? I walked out of the St. James Theater that night and saying, you know what, we got to keep Bruce alive and healthy, because he really is a treasure. He is still, because I've been listening to his music for so long, and the song that really 10th Avenue Freeze Out, he did a full new arrangement in 2021 that was different from what we saw in 2018, different than what we saw at the Christic Institute. That song's evolved, and the fact that he took the time and the stories were different, it was a different pace, it was a different vibe. I was like, you know what, this guy's not done. And it could be real easy for him to basically just say, you know what, I'm doing my 9-to-5 job. I've got a full-time job now down at the St. James Theater, and just mail it in for the summer, but he didn't. So I didn't see the Electric Bruce, but leaving that theater after what I just saw, and I remember standing on the corner of Bryant Park in New York and saying, this is amazing. We got to keep Bruce alive and healthy, because he's still got a lot in him. So I know that energy's there.
Yeah, I think so. So Betsy, how about you? Any thoughts on any of the kind of performances he's done this summer, with either the one-offs or it seems like he's just ready to get out there?
Yeah, I mean, you could every time I watch one of these performances, it's like someone who's sitting on the edge of their seat. He always gives everything he has to every performance he does, whether it's 2 minutes or 200 minutes, I mean, he is all about performing and having that conversation with us live and in person. And I mean, I think that it wasn't, they weren't on Saturday Night Live in 2021, but
Yeah.
that energy, just, you could just see, he's just ready to go.
Yeah.
And I am with Rachel. Like, if we get an hour-long set with Bruce and the band on tour, great. We're just freaking lucky to be alive at the same time Bruce Springsteen's making music, let alone making live music.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, you know, Jesse, I have a policy. I do not publicly criticize or complain about Bruce, his choices, anything he does, which he makes for me very easy.
Yes.
It's not I don't sit around having a lot of criticisms and
Yeah.
complaints. And I am curious about the people who have pre-complaints about a future tour, when I will just feel lucky to have one at all.
Yeah, I think well said. You know, because I do think, you know, the people that have a stopwatch and like, well, it was only 2 hours and 20 minutes tonight. Like, were you not involved in the show? I mean, you know. All right, so a couple quick hits. There's not many families that can say they have an Oscar, they have Golden Globes, they have platinum albums, and a silver Olympic medal. So the Springsteen family's doing pretty well. I remember that Kirk Douglas was asked once, "Are you jealous that your son won an Oscar and you never did?" And Kirk Douglas said, "He's my son. If he wins an Oscar, I win an Oscar. He is me. It's the same thing to me." And I feel that you know, as a father, I can only imagine he's probably as proud of her getting the Olympic medal as he is for any sold out arena or anything. So any quick thoughts about Jessica, except, you know, just how cool it was? Anyone?
This isn't about Jessica, but I was
Yeah.
so excited for her. But we also have an Olympian in our family.
Oh,
Our great niece is the 7th fastest 100-meter hurdler in the world.
oh, wow. Very nice. That's pretty cool.
So I can affirm for you, having an
Yes.
Olympian in the family is awesome.
Very nice. Very cool.
Oh, and I should say
Yeah.
her name, Gabby Cunningham.
Oh, very nice. Very good. All right. We have two big topics to left. I've loved all the things he's done with Ellen Mellencamp, with Eddie Vedder, and you know, Tom Morello. We could certainly talk about any of that, but I think the two big topics left to talk about is the 79 No Nukes concert and then the big move with Sony. So let's talk about the 79 first. And I'm going to start with you, Betsy. You know, what did you think of the Blu-ray and the release? What seeing this young Bruce, and I know 30 isn't considered young, but when you're my age, it is damn young. What were your thoughts on that?
Here's my confession.
Yeah.
I've listened to it. I
Okay.
have not watched it. I'm saving it.
Oh, that's I did the same thing. By the way, I waited till like there was no one else around. It's like my wife was out of town and I could put it on and I could just savor it. So there's nothing wrong with that.
I haven't had the moment yet. And I will just, as an aside, we also haven't talked about the Sways Waves controversy, which we might not want to touch with a 10
No, I want to love that. That's a great idea.
That's one of the biggest Springsteen moments of the year, as far as I'm concerned.
I think that is. John, any thoughts on the No Nukes?
Yeah, I love it a lot, both the CD and the movie. Betsy, maybe it's good. Yeah, here's my biggest problem with the movie. I can't stop watching it. So I've got the physical. I bought the physical DVD, but I also paid the extra money just to get it online so I could get it immediately. And so I'll flip up my I'll flip up my computer and watch it at lunch and say, okay, I got time for like 3 songs, and I can't stop watching it. It's so good. And I think just from a nostalgia standpoint, that was about a year before I became a fan. So that was kind of the Bruce I remember. That and also the other thing that was real interesting was it just kind of reflects how far we've come along, because the actual No Nukes movie that came out in the theaters in I want to say like August, September 1980. So at then I wasn't a fan. I never saw the concert movie. 3 years later, it did come back for one day only, and I remember sitting through this movie twice. There was a theater in Seattle. It was called the Neptune Theater. And what they would do is they would show a classic movie, but they'd only show it for one day. And so it was a Saturday in the summer of 1983, and it was a double feature. They were showing No Nukes and the Woodstock movie.
Okay.
And I was like, well, it's like you don't see, Bruce had no videos in 1983. You could never see him. Other than the live performance that I had seen, I'd never seen anything of him before. So I gotta go. And so I basically sat through the whole movie just for 2.5 songs. And then I stayed in the theater, sat through the Woodstock movie so I could watch it again. So anyway, so I really feel blessed that, all these years later, now we get to see the full performance. I think they did a great job. Betsy, you're going to love it. It's real fun seeing a 29-year-old turning 30 Bruce. The music is great. Clarence is awesome. And if you look at the songs that were in the set, other than The River and the covers, I mean, all of them are all heavy on saxophone. So you get a lot of Clarence in the movie. So anyway, I loved it. I'll leave it at that, Jesse.
Yeah, no, one of the things I thought, which is how empty the stage felt back then, because they didn't have Niels and Steven. They didn't have Patty, they didn't have Susie. It was the core beginning, that E Street Band. And it was almost like, wow, there's so much space left on stage, now than is. So Rachel, have you got to explore any of this? As I know you're had a busy fall.
Oh yeah. So I'm kind of in the same boat of like, now is finally my time where I have downtime and I have those quiet moments. So I have not watched it yet. But everybody keeps going, oh yeah, he was like 30. And I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's because like I'm only 21, so I didn't like get to see him through all of the different, but I'm going 30 where? Like, okay, like I think we can all agree that he is just a very attractive man. However, also, I mean, like, I don't know, that really kind of threw me off. But besides that point, it's like another thing, along with the podcast, just everything where I'm like, oh my God, like now I can do my little like deep dive into this. Like I'm the same way. I forget exactly who said it, but like I like to, have experience those like exciting things for the first time when I know like nobody's gonna bother me. Like I can just be in my full like Bruce fan mode and just watch or listen or whatever it is, the thing in its entirety.
Yeah.
So I'm still waiting, but my only, we were talking about people having pre-tour, like criticisms. So me not having watched it yet, this is going to be a criticism, but the only criticism I have is that obviously it was before Nils joined the band.
Yes.
So I not get to,
right.
Indulge my like passions about that, but besides that, I'm sure it'll be great.
But it is that it's because he joined right after Born in the USA and everything. You think of him as always been part of the band, but he wasn't. It was exactly. Pretty interesting. All right, Steven, how about you?
I don't have Betsy or Rachel's discipline. I saw it immediately because I was really looking forward to it. A couple of things that stood out to me were the tempos. They're just crazy tempos.
Yeah.
And it might be because like you, Rachel, I was a baby when I first heard Bruce Springsteen. I was born in 1981. And I didn't really hear him until, 1984, 85, when Born in the USA is just crazy. I had the record, that was one of my first. So my Springsteen fandom goes back to age 4. But I don't know, and I'm not familiar with, except for what came out on the live box set, what Bruce would have sounded or looked like before that. And I heard all the releases and all that, the bootlegs. I've heard all those, but actually seeing what this band looked like in 1979, that was just a real treat and a real gift, because man, they were hungry and they were tight and they were playing great. And I think, John, you mentioned Clarence. I was just getting emotional watching Clarence play. No, ain't nobody playing like Clarence Clemens. No one ever. And I always know it's him. And I don't know that it's about how, whether he's a good technical sax player or not, but I feel every note that he plays. It like hits my soul. And so Jungle Land for me was just out of this world on No Nuke. So anyway, I'm watching it all the time. I'm watching bits of it every day, John, probably like you.
Yeah, I agree. I enjoyed it so much. I was struck by how long the songs were. There was a lot of, sax solos and guitar solos and playing, and, as he said in an interview, Bruce was worried, becoming over self-aware. If he watched himself perform, would he become self-conscious and everything? And it is just really there's a couple of people on Twitter that were really, really wanting tracks 2 this year, and because they didn't get tracks 2, they felt like it was a disappointing year. And I was like, how, with all the stuff we get? I mean, John, Stephen, you guys remember the lost years, right? Like after he and the band parted, and you're like, we may never get another Bruce album again. I mean, so to have this much information is just kind of, I'm so grateful. All right, so I'll start us off. I think the Sony thing is much ado about nothing, and then we're going to talk about something really important: Sways or Ways. From my perspective, this is estate planning. This is smart businessman. It is it's a good deal for him. It's a good deal for Sony, which is what's nice when you do business deals. I certainly disagree with anyone saying he's sold out. I saw someone post on Facebook, and I was in one of the Facebook fan groups, said that her daughter gave her Renegades as a present. And when she saw how much it was, she made her daughter return it because it was too expensive, and she wasn't going to give that money to that billionaire. And I was like, it's $30. Do you never buy a hardback? I mean, I've paid over 100 for a hardback comic book collection, so I was surprised about that. But Stephen, any thoughts about Sony now? And are you worried we're going to get rising Viagra commercials?
I'm not worried about that at all, and I'll tell you why I'm not worried about that. I think that Sony paid $550 or $500 million for this. If they put it in everything, they're going to devalue that asset.
Absolutely, well said.
So my guess is that you're not going to see it. You might see it in a commercial here or there, but I'm not expecting that. I think this is just Bruce turning 72, thinking about the future. Who's going to care for this thing? He doesn't want to tear apart his kids who don't know anything about the music industry and how to navigate it, and Sony does. So why not do this now? I don't see this as selling out at all. A 72-year-old can't sell out. It's just, he's providing for his family and making this easier. This makes sense to me. Yeah. And I'm glad to see that he was able to get $500 million for his work. I think it's worth much more than that, but it's just good to see that he's going to be taking care of his family. And I'm not worried about come up for Verizon. I'm not worried about that.
Yeah. Well, and I think it may come out to be, it's kind of, the same thing with sport franchises, right? Like you hear someone buy a sports franchise and then 10 or 15 years you go, oh, that ends up being a bargain. So this could be the same thing for Sony. Betsy, any thoughts?
I mean, go get that bread, Bruce.
Yeah.
You know, I'm just trying to imagine Sam Springsteen, Jersey City firefighter,
Yeah.
trying to navigate through all the requests for licensing for his father's music, 30 years from now. It's just his kids. I don't know his kids. I don't imagine that they want to take that on. And I actually imagine that he had a long conversation with them about it before he took any action. So I agree with you. Much ado about nothing. Look, if it's good enough for Dylan, it's good enough for Bruce.
There you go. Yeah. John?
Yeah, how can you argue with it? I mean, what's the alternative? I mean, I didn't look in a lot of detail, but I know, like, when Prince passed away in 2016, there was not a lot of planning done, and there was a lot of,
Yeah, he didn't leave a will.
No, and so now that he's not here, he hasn't given any direction on what all of his unreleased music, what should be done with it. And I saw there was a 60 Minutes story sometime earlier this year that talked about it, and people are making those decisions, but it's not him. And so I think, from our perspective, we're looking at a number. Well, first of all, and it does make sense to have professionals handling this music catalog as opposed to leaving it to your family. We're looking at a big number, a gross number, but we don't see the specific instructions that go within that, because I'm sure there's certain parameters on what you can and cannot do. And the other thing on look, I think it's only fair that you get fair value for whatever your art is worth. But the other thing is, Bruce is very quiet on his philanthropic side, and there's other ultra high net worth individuals that they can take care of their family, but they can also be very philanthropic. And I know he's very secret about that. Once in a while, things slip out that, oh no, he bought these buses for this senior center here in New Jersey. You just don't hear about it. So, like I said, I know part of his estate planning is also doing philanthropic planning, and I'm sure that's a big part of it also. And it's really no one else's business, and he doesn't want to. He doesn't want to make it our business because he's not looking for the publicity. But I'm sure there's a big charitable piece of that also.
Yeah, and I want to hear your thoughts, Rachel, but let's also think about it. John Landau, Barbara Carr are both older, so he, who will own his legacy? Jessica is an Olympic star. His youngest son is a firefighter. I do believe his oldest son is into music. I think I'd heard that, but as a musician, not a businessman, so it makes a lot of sense. Any thoughts, Rachel?
Yeah, I just think, like, I mean, it's Bruce. Like, he's been around enough to know what he's doing. And I mean, kind of like John said, like, it's really nobody else's business. But also, I think that there's, this sense of the criticisms are so strong, I think, because Bruce made his whole career pretty much being this very personable, very relatable kind of, easygoing kind of guy. I think that gives somewhat of a false sense of, oh, I know this person. And while that is, it's almost like, good, a blessing and a curse, because that, like, him being so personable and so relatable reflects in the best way and allows for those really strong connections to be made. But I think on the other hand, it's like when you kind of think that you feel like somebody, that's when you feel like you're kind of judgments are justified. And in this case, I just don't find that they are. I mean, like, obviously pretty much what everybody else said. I mean, he's doing what he needs to do for himself, for his family, and at the end of the day, like, obviously that's most important. So yeah, I agree with your whole take of Much Ado About Nothing, because I just don't see it as anything that reflects negatively on him.
You know what, I make one of your comments made me think about, I listen to a lot of podcasts, and there was one, a guy named Matt Donnelly that does his own podcast, and he's also on Penn Jillette's from Penn and Teller's podcast. And people come up to him and say, I feel like I know you because I listened to your podcast. And he goes, you do know me, I just don't know you. Right. Like, you know, and so I do think it's like, yeah, we don't know Bruce totally, but we know Bruce, and he just doesn't know us because he has shared so much. And I think over the years, Betsy, I think you brought up the perfect topic to end us, is the Sways or Waves. I've always thought it was kind of funny. And then when this came out, there are still people that are dying on that hill one way or another. And I'm just like, really? You know, and in fact, you know, I've always joked, right? Like, it isn't Sways or Waves, it's Does Mary Get in the Car? Because that's how I end every podcast. So let's start with you, Betsy, since it was your topic. I just find this shocking that it's just like, okay, now we know. No, we don't.
I mean, I used to refer to it as Schrodinger's lyric, right?
Yeah.
Like, it's
Yes.
both waves and sways. And I just never thought anyone would answer the question because so many people have tattoos.
Right.
And then John Landau answered the question. Like, when Brian Hyatt put his book out about all the songs, I actually asked him on Twitter, did anybody mention whether it sways or waves? And he was like, no, I got an indication that it was sways, but not really. But look, and then people were like, well, John Landau isn't Bruce. Okay, well, I was at Springsteen on Broadway on August 31st. He didn't do it on the 24th, but on August 31st, when he was singing Thunder Road, Bruce Springsteen, you know, started the song, the screen door slams, Mary's dress sways, and he leaned into the microphone and he said, sways, unmistakably and on purpose. And if that is not enough for people, you can think that waves is better, that it's better rhyming wise, or that it's better for whatever reason. You can acknowledge that at some point Bruce wrote down the word waves on a piece of paper. I mean, I've seen that piece of paper, but look, he's clear now. It sways now. And I was always team sways. I was very quiet about it because I didn't want to argue with anybody about it, but I was always team sways. So this did not offend my sensibilities in any way whatsoever. But I saw him and heard him. I saw him with my own eyes, heard him with my own ears, lean forward and say, sways.
There we go. Case closed, right? Very nice. Rachel, your thoughts on this? I love this topic because there are so many things to be passionate about. There's so much to love about Bruce, and I just find this is hilarious.
Yeah, I know, right? It's like it started as kind of like an ongoing joke, like a haha moment, into full almost war. Like, anyway, though.
Yes.
So I am also team sways, and I went on August 25th, and he did do the sways repetition into the microphone, so I can also attest to that. But it's funny because when this whole thing kind of started blowing up, I would record my family members. I'd walk into a room and I'd go, screen door slams, Mary's dress, and I'd wait and see what they said. And almost everybody in my family said waves. And I was like, you guys, come on. Like, what? Like, we've literally been listening to these songs, like, for my sister anyway, so my twin sister, so literally the same age. I was like, We've heard this song since we were babies, so why don't you know the words?
I love
But,
that. That is a great story.
But yeah, I'm Team Sways, and then it's funny because it even turned, obviously it was really blowing up on Twitter. And so Amy Lofgren said Waves, and it was probably the first time I ever disagreed with her. And then Nils came in and said Sways, and I was like, that's my hero.
So they have a mixed marriage. Yes.
Over here. But ultimately, I think Team Sways just might. I mean, I'm just totally in full agreement with Betsy. Like, from Bruce's mouth, like.
There we go. Yeah. Steven, any thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I was there on, I don't remember actually the date that I saw it, but
Yeah.
it was a very funny moment when Bruce came in and said, Sways. I mean,
Yeah.
that was really funny. The next thing that we need to correct is the misunderstanding in I'm on Fire, where people say it's like someone took a knife, baby, edgy and dull, and cut a 6-inch valley through the middle of my skull, is absolutely what he's saying. But when you read the lyrics on springsteenlyrics.com, it says soul, and cover versions say that as soul. It's not soul. I can tell you why it's not soul, but that would take too long.
Okay.
So-
Well, maybe I'll have you
So-
back on the podcast.
So
and we'll
I'm
do a
much
whole
more
episode.
I'm much more worried about that. I do not give a darn about Sways versus Waves. It's always been Sways. I don't know why that's even a debate.
Yeah.
I mean, I do know why it's a debate, but
Yes,
it's always
absolutely.
absolute.
Yes. John?
Yeah, I thought it was Waves, and then I saw Broadway, and now I know better. Yeah, it's just the crazy thing is just started with that Maggie Haberman tweet. I mean, it was basically she spit it out, Sways, and people just pounced all over her.
Yeah.
And it's just funny how it was just that, because I'm not on Twitter a lot, but I was on that night,
Yeah.
and I was excited when I was, oh, someone's on Broadway, and I think Preet Bharara might have been at the same show. So
Yeah.
two people that I kind of follow, and I was like, oh wow, and then but all of a
good.
sudden it blew up. But like I said, if it wasn't for Maggie Haberman, we probably this wouldn't even be a discussion. It's just kind of funny how that launched.
That is kind of funny. All right, ended up, we're going to close it. We're almost at 2 hours. Thank you guys so much for giving me so much of your time. 2022, what do you think we're going to see? And knock on wood, we get a tour. Is it a greatest hits kind of celebration of your career, or are we going to get a lot of Letter to You, the way we would as if he had toured right after the album and how, as he often does, like with Magic or Wrecking Ball, or where he plays a lot of songs? And I'll start with you, John.
Yeah. So if it's, there's so much uncertainty right now. If I had to make a prediction, it's going to be, maybe the tour starts in the springtime. It's predominantly outdoor shows. And I would hope that it's new songs, because I think that's what I appreciate more about the concerts is I like the old songs, but I love how Bruce takes songs that were on an album and then kind of converts them into their own arrangement live. So I'm hoping that it's a lot of Letter to You and some Western Stars. I'll be happy, but you know what? I'll be happy either way. Trust me.
Absolutely.
I'll be happy with anything.
Yeah. Spring Nuts, Howie asks a different question every day, and he asked just earlier this week, what are you wanting to hear live, a full album? And your hero answered Letter to You, didn't he, Rachel?
You know what, listen, I was about to say the same thing. Yes. So that for me, I was like, well, I don't know. I kind of had this mindset of, I saw that tweet and I was like, what would I like to hear? But of course, my perspective is very different, having never been to an E Street show. Right. So I'm like running through the whole like catalog in my mind, like, okay, like what do I want to hear? But if I had to make a prediction, I probably would go with Letter to You. And I think a big part of that.
You're freezing up, Rachel. All right, let's see if she frees up a minute. Stephen, while you go, hopefully she'll unfreeze in a minute. Stephen, how about you? What's your prediction for 20? No, there you are.
Oh,
Go ahead, say again, Rachel. You froze up. Finish it.
When did I freeze? What was I saying?
You were saying if
Did
you
I
had a
s- what- where
prediction.
did
Yes,
I
if
go?
you were gonna make
okay.
a prediction.
So yeah, so if I had a prediction, I would go with Letter to You.
Okay.
Just probably because mostly of the Nils tweet, but also, I mean, I don't know. I can't quite remember what context this was in, so maybe somebody else will remember. But he was talking about how it was like post-pandemic, like you're kind of, what are you envisioning? And he was like, oh, I'm gonna like, wait, it might have been, okay, I'm not gonna make myself look stupid here, but he was just saying like, oh, I'm gonna have the biggest party and you're all invited.
Yes.
And so I anticipate whatever might happen with the tour, I would expect that to be the overarching theme of just pure Bruce energy. Just that was the one thing that I missed. Going to Springsteen on Broadway. At the end, I was thrilled. I was emotionally all over the place. But I was looking at everybody around me and I was just thinking, I just can't wait for an E Street show. I was like, everybody around me, I was thinking, I want to just get up and sing and dance with strangers. And because you're not really strangers, right? Like you do get that sense of family right from the start. So whatever he does, it'll be great. But yeah, probably Letter to You, but I wouldn't be surprised if, he kind of throws us a curve.
Stephen, how about you? What's your kind of prediction if you have one?
I have no prediction, but I can tell you what I want.
Fair enough.
I want, well, okay. I want to go on tour.
Yes.
And I want it to be able to happen safely. I want to hear a Letter to You, Western Stars, and kind of the beginning part of the show, and then a great encore of just some classics, from the back catalog. One thing that I want to know more about is this mysterious album that we've heard about in a couple of different places. I remember I first time reading it was in a Rolling Stone interview he did after Letter to You. He made mention of there being another album. And then I think it was when he won the Woody Guthrie Prize, he mentioned another album that was going to come out. And I'm kind of wondering what the deal is with that. I'm wondering if we're going to get that in 2022.
That would be cool. That'd be very nice. Betsy?
Well, just, the Nils tweet and then things that Stephen has said in the interviews about his book and lead me to believe it'll be a Letter to You tour. My hope is that there'll also be some Western Stars. It's not an album you could tour with exactly, but I think some of those songs would be great E Street songs. Yeah. And my secret hope is that there's more music released in 2022 on top of Letter to You, that there's either a new album, the elusive tracks to something. I hope it's another album.
Absolutely, I agree. That's what I'm hoping to. The reality is, Linda was talking the other day, and she's like, has it been that long since you've seen Bruce live? I go, yes, it has. She goes, you must be kind of anxious. I go, yes, I'm very anxious. So thank you guys. This was absolutely wonderful. I appreciate this so much. This is a joy. You all are just wonderful people, and I'm so glad you were on the show again. Let's go around. Any final thoughts, Rachel?
I just want to say that, like I just kind of said earlier, like, I know that I personally haven't spoken to any of the other, guests, but I did immediately kind of get that sense of family. It's been so nice talking to everybody. And Jesse, that I love being on this podcast. So it was really an honor to be able to do this again as kind of an end of the year wrap up. So thank you so much, everybody.
Good. Stephen?
I don't have anything other to say than thank you for inviting me, Jesse. And it's good to see you again. It's good to see you doing well, and you're looking healthy to me, and I'm happy to see that. So
Thank you. I
yeah.
appreciate it. I'm doing well. Betsy?
Thank you for having me on. Like I said, I'm always up for talking about Bruce, always up for talking to you, Jesse. And like Stephen, I couldn't let a 2021 year in review pass without noting that one of the biggest stories of the year is that you are sitting here with us chatting in good health, having had your health adventures this year. I'm just really, really pleased.
Thank you. I appreciate the kind words. I went to the doctor this week and everything's good. I'm excited. I've took a little step backwards, as most people do during the holidays. So come January, I will have to be a little bit going, but everything's fine and doing well. Jon, how about you, sir?
I just want to say, I really think for 2022, I mean, we talked a little bit about potential tours. Expect surprises. I think there's going to be big surprises that we're not going to see coming, whether it's certain types of music. We expect surprises. And I guess the other thing I want to say is just, Jesse, thank you for all you do. I'll just take it from you. Everyone has a Springsteen story, and the fact that you offer this forum for everyone to share. And honestly, I don't have anyone to talk about Bruce Springsteen to, other than this, group of people on the call tonight, and to you and the other people I've met through the podcast. So Jesse, I'm very grateful for what you do, and truly appreciate it.
Well, thank you all to my guests, and we appreciate it. And I tweeted this 168 episodes out this year in calendar year. I did hit 800 episodes, so that's a whole lot of Bruce talk. And we're already making plans for 2022. Betsy's already signed up to do a John Hyatt talk with me, and we're going to have some of those. And we're going to talk a little John Hyatt, and I'm hoping for some more, a lot more guests. We're reaching out to people. So I plan to keep doing this as long as I can find people who want to talk Bruce. And I figure, if he's touring, it'll be even more great. So I hope each of you who are listening had a wonderful holiday season. I hope that 2022 is a good year for each one of you. I hope it's a year of, success, good health, and joy for you and your family. Thank you, guests. Thank you, listeners. And we will see you next year. Goodbye. And there we are. We're done. Thank you, guys.